It's 3 a.m., you're staring at the ceiling. Your phone is face down on the nightstand because you promised yourself you wouldn't check it, but your mind is wide awake. You start to panic a little, something must be wrong with you, but the real answer is far stranger. For most of human history, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a disorder, it was Tuesday. Picture a household 400 years ago, no electricity, no streetlights. Just a hearth fire burning low and a house full of sleeping bodies. Around midnight, people started stirring, not tossing and turning in frustration. Getting up, lighting a candle, talking, praying, having sex, tending the fire. Then an hour or two later, they went back to sleep until dawn. Historians call this segmented sleep. And it wasn't. It was the default setting of the human night. The man who uncovered this is a historian named Roger Eckerch. He spent over a decade combing through diaries, court records, medical texts, and literature from pre-industrial Europe. He found references to first sleep and second sleep scattered everywhere, not as strange events, as ordinary vocabulary. People wrote about the hour between sleeps the way you might write about your lunch break. It had a name because everyone understood exactly what it meant. Why does this matter to you? Because your body still remembers it. Your ancestors lived by a rhythm shaped by darkness, not by clocks. And that rhythm didn't vanish just because we invented light bulbs. Here's where it gets interesting. In the early 1990s, a psychiatrist named Thomas Weyer ran an experiment that quietly rewired how scientists understand sleep. He took a group of volunteers and put them in a room with 14 hours of darkness every night. No screens, no lamps, nothing but darkness for weeks at a time. What happened? At first, the volunteers slept and slept as if paying off an exhausted debt. But after a few weeks, something shifted. They began falling into a two-part sleep pattern almost identical to what Eckerch had found buried in old diaries. 4 hours of sleep, an hour or two of quiet wakefulness, then 4 more hours of sleep. Nobody told them to do this. Their biology simply found its way back to an old, familiar shape the moment modern light was removed. Think about what that means. The 8-hour uninterrupted block of sleep you've been chasing your whole life may not be the natural human default at all. It may be a relatively recent invention built by artificial light, factory schedules, and the industrial clock. So what changed? The answer isn't romantic, it's economic. As cities grew and gaslighting spread through the streets of Europe in the 1800s, nightlife exploded. People stayed up later, coffee houses stayed open past dark. And then came the factory whistle. Industrial labor demanded a single, consolidated block of rest so workers could show up sharp for a long, uninterrupted shift. Sleep stopped being something your body negotiated with the night. It became something your employer scheduled for you. By the early 1900s, references to first sleep and second sleep had all but disappeared from written language, not because the biology changed, because the culture around it did. A pattern that had lasted for thousands of years quietly vanished in about 100. Now here's the twist nobody expects. If segmented sleep was so normal, why don't people in small-scale societies without electricity today split their sleep the same way? A researcher named Jerome Siegel wanted to know exactly that. He and his team studied 3 hunter-gatherer and pre-industrial groups, the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Namibia, and the Tsimane of Bolivia. All 3 groups sleep without electricity, without alarm clocks, without screens. And what he found surprised almost everyone in the field. None of them practiced segmented sleep as a nightly ritual. They slept in a single block, often shorter than 8 hours, and they rarely napped. Their sleep tracked the temperature drop of the night far more closely than the presence or absence of light. This complicated the story. It suggested segmented sleep wasn't some universal ancient default hardwired into every human. It may have been a specific adaptation to cold climates, long winter nights, and indoor life near a hearth. So which is it? Are you built for 1 long sleep or 2 shorter ones? The honest answer is that you're built for flexibility. Human sleep architecture evolved to bend around environment, temperature, safety, and light. Somewhere between the Tsimane's single block and Eckerch's candlelit diaries lies the real truth. Your ancestors weren't sleeping wrong when they woke at midnight, and they weren't sleeping wrong when they slept straight through. They were adapting, constantly. The rigid 8-hour block you feel pressured to hit every single night is a modern invention layered on top of a much older, more elastic system. This reframes something you've probably felt shame about, that 3 a.m. wake-up. It's not automatically insomnia. Sometimes it's your body doing exactly what bodies did for centuries before anyone decided that was a problem. Waking briefly, resting the mind, then drifting back down. Of course, this doesn't mean chronic sleep disruption is fine. Real insomnia is exhausting and it deserves real treatment. But there's a difference between struggling to fall back asleep and quietly accepting a natural nighttime stir. Eckerch found something else buried in those old records that's easy to miss. People describe the waking hour between sleeps as peaceful, even useful. A window for reflection, prayer, quiet conversation, intimacy, not a crisis to escape. A pause built into the architecture of the night. Compare that to how you experience your own 3 a.m. waking, heart rate climbing, mind racing toward tomorrow's meetings, phone glowing in your hand because silence feels unbearable. The waking itself hasn't changed much across the centuries. What changed is what you're allowed to think about it. There's a reason this matters more now than ever. Artificial light didn't just push back your bedtime, it rewired your relationship to darkness itself. For nearly all of human history, the night was long, dark, and unavoidable. There was nothing to do but let the mind wander in the space between sleeps. Now, the moment you wake up, there's a screen within arm's reach promising to fill that space instantly. You've traded a natural pause for a dopamine reflex. Some sleep researchers now wonder if part of modern insomnia isn't a broken body but a mismatch. A body still wired for segmented, flexible, environment-driven rest, dropped into a culture that treats any nighttime waking as failure. You panic at 3 a.m. not because your ancestors would have panicked. You panic because you've been told your entire life that sleep only counts if it's unbroken. So next time you wake in the dark and your mind won't quiet down, try something different. Don't reach for the phone. Don't calculate how many hours you have left. Let the mind drift the way it once did by candlelight by dying embers in a house full of quietly stirring people who assumed this was simply what nights were for. Because the truth is far stranger than the story you've been telling yourself in the dark. It's not that something is wrong with you at 3 a.m. It's that you inherited a rhythm older than the light bulb, older than the factory clock, older than the idea that rest has to look one specific way. And somewhere in that inheritance is permission. Permission to stop treating the quiet middle of the night as an enemy and start treating it the way your ancestors once did, as simply the space between two sleeps.